Here.
Knopfinger.
Here.
Butler.
Here.
Armstrong. Do we have anyone from the student council to lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you could introduce yourselves and tell us what year you are in school and a little bit about what student council is doing.
Sure. So I'm Edward Andrews, a junior student council representative.
I'm Maddie Wallace, and I'm also a junior from student council. I'm Shelby Gordon, and I'm a sophomore. I'm Madeline Lundquist, and I'm a senior.
So student council's been actually very busy this year. Our most recent activity that we did was Boo Bash. We had a very large attendance for this event, and it was actually the largest attendance we've ever had for that event. And we also had a lot of success involving the student body and the community. Student council's main upcoming activity is Winter Spirits Week. We have a lot of spirit ideas that are still in development. We're working on kind of choosing some. And then we are working on a fundraiser to help those in need during the winter season. There's still a lot of ideas that are tentative out there, however. And that's kind of like the main stuff that we're working on.
Well, I have heard about Boo Bash was a super success because some of the kids still have candy left over. Thanks for putting that on. And you can. Anybody else have any questions for them? You're free to go, or you're welcome to say whatever you choose.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the public hearing part for the transfer of funds. Dr. Sanders.
Okay. Tonight the board's going to have a couple of resolutions that deal with fund transfers. One is the reason why we're having this hearing is to transfer funds from the Operation and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund. It requires a hearing of the Board of Education. And so just a couple of quick points. On September 10th, 2018, the Board of Education approved the 18-19 budget. And in that budget included a fund transfer of $500,000 from the O&M fund to the Capital Projects Fund. This money has been set aside for the projects. This particular project was the roof project that put a new roof on the southern portion of the main campus. So this is in execution of the designated funds transfer that we have been setting aside funds for the last 3 years for some of these capital projects. The Finance Committee met on October 29th to discuss the fund transfer, and so a legal notice was posted and published in the local newspaper in compliance with those Section 17-2 of the Illinois School Code. That concludes my presentation. We'll turn it on over to the board president to see if anyone would like to make comments.
Okay, so I will ask if there's anyone present who wishes to comment on the funds transfer. Being that no one's here to talk to us about it, I shall read a resolution and then we'll have a roll call vote. The resolution is authorizing the transfer of funds from the Operation and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund of the Washington Community High School District 308, Caswell County, Illinois. Roll call, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a motion to accept the resolution as read?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Roll call now. Butler?
Yes.
Warren? Yes.
Essing? Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to visitors and correspondence. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board on another topic? Moving on, we received some informational items in our packets. The Bennett letter and the Jordan family card. They had time to read those probably. And then moving on to reports, Dean report 6.11. Anyone have any comments on enrollment? chance to look at those. Okay, and then we'll move on to 6.2, Common Arts, Mr. Jim Palmer.
It's been 2 years since I presented to the board, and after hearing from Tom Gross, who said his 26-minute library presentation left you wanting so much more, ladies and gentlemen, this 90-minute presentation of fine arts, day by day, is going to blow you away. First, our staff. Let's put this one. Okay, this is the full-timers. We have 2 new people in the art department. Jack Clifford. Margaret's been here for 2 years, this is her 2nd year. And then Laura and Lisa. And then the part-timers, Lisa and myself, we split our time between fine arts and English department. Accomplishments. The fall musical and spring play. This is basically the stuff that has happened since my last presentation. Still good, well-attended productions of fall musical and spring play. The music department was state champs, sweepstakes in 2017 and co-champion with Dunlap in 2018. The chamber ensemble sang at Carnegie Hall last year and is going to be singing at a U of I Invitational Choral Festival in February. And art, we've been working with WHIP, with the Empty Bowls charity now for 3 years running. Other accomplishments. Arts also is partnering with the new Ronald McDonald House and will design a wall in the playroom. The intermediate guitar, Lisa's taken that to a higher level that they started competing in the IHSA State Solo Ensemble contest last year. And marching band this season had 2 grand champions, made finals at Honors Grove, and the 2nd time finished first in their class at U of I. Faculty accomplishments. Jamie Banzoff is presenting at the Illinois Art Education Conference. She's selected to be on the board for a regional conference Scholastic Arts competition, and she's currently working on a master's in art education at EIU. Jack Clifford has been illustrating for children's books, and some of his books can be purchased on Amazon. Lisa Stout is currently president of the Illinois Communications and Theater Association. Laura Ream is working on her doctorate in education from the University of Illinois. I was appointed conductor of Bregman Ensemble through ICC, and I'm going to guest conduct District 3 high school concert band this weekend up at Olivet. Art accomplishments. There's several names there. There's 2 pages here. Can I give you a second to kind of look at all the awards from last year? Lots of Scholastic's Gold Key winners. Chorus had 5 All-State musicians last year. Instrumental, 34 students were in 7 different honor bands last year. 2 students toured Europe this summer with the Illinois Ambassadors of Music. And one thing it's our 2nd year. Last year we started Project 3000, where we try to make a pledge to volunteer 3,000 hours of community work. We ended up with 3,157 hours last school year. Because the enrollment has increased, we upped that to Project 3,500. And at the time of this presentation, it was 1,690. We're now over 1,700 hours volunteered towards the goal of 3,500 hours. Okay, strengths. Collaboration department working well together. Community outreach. Each department works well with the community. Number of students going into art-related fields. New facilities for the music department. The arts has begun articulation with some of the grade schools and middle schools, which hasn't happened before. And guest presenters and professionals work with art and music. Weaknesses, lack of storage space and a lack of a graphics program for art. Both are being addressed. Opportunities. Our department participates in more competitive art shows than any other middle Illini school. There are at least 12 different ensembles between chorus and band that students can participate here at WCHS. New space could provide for possible future piano course that's been discussed now for about a decade. And each band student is now, with part of their fees, have a subscription to Smart Music, which just gives them a lot of, opens up a lot of literature that they can play and be assessed on at their own home. A threat we have that's kind of developed that driver's ed students are still pulled out. They cannot be pulled out of PE. They're pulled out of the art classes or music classes. So those students become one day behind each week with with where they're at in the class. Program and services, our AP classes are offered in art. Communication. Departments use Remind app to communicate with students and parents, and band emails, a newsletter every 1 to 2 weeks through Charms and Skyward. Facilities, Turf has been a big asset to our marching band program, and there still is a need for storage space for all departments. So, questions and thoughts of anything I can answer or address?
This is a compliment. Your department is incredible.
Thanks.
Will the storage space, will some of that be addressed by the addition, or is it?
Some of it.
Okay.
Some of it. We're still like, our band buildings, we're running out of room out there at that part. So there'll be more storage space, but as the programs become bigger, the equipment, which is hard to gauge right now.
So primarily the band section of the.
Actually, the biggest concern for storage space is art right now.
Art.
Yes. I think that with the music department, hopefully there's going to be more storage space. So we just know there's a concern out in the building. We have to look at, but the art department's really hurting for storage space.
So you've had about 3 years ago, you had a pretty vibrant art department, and I'm sure you still do on some level, but you had some faculty that were very involved, and there's been a lot of turnover, I think, in the art department faculty. So is it hard to maintain the kind of vibrancy that you had going there?
I think maybe it was when you have a rotating faculty that makes it a little more difficult, but I think the team we have now really works together well. They're doing a lot of activities together, and I think it's more cohesive than it was even 5 or 6 years ago. Probably Karen could attest to more of that, but at least that's what I've seen. They do work together really well.
I agree.
And I think you'll see the difference in that in the next few years.
Because you guys have a lot of nice synergy, like, with the magazine, the literary magazine that you do.
Bloom, yeah.
Just Bloom. So I like the synergy between departments. It's kind of an art STEM-like thing.
Yeah.
I got 2 quick questions. One, and I don't know the proper name for it, but there's an art that we do, like Mid-Illini art, that's usually in April. Is that called Prairie Art Fest? I mean, we participate in it, it's downtown.
There's a few of them that are similar to that. I'm not sure if that's the exact Mid-Illini one, but Mid-Illini schools participate in several different art festivals.
The one downtown is the Mid-Illini Art Festival.
And that's usually in April?
March and April, I
March
believe.
I'm sorry.
It's around.
It's in the spring.
Yeah.
And I remember it's still cold.
Okay, well, if you could get an email out to us on that, because I do like to attend that every year, and I missed it one year because I didn't know what month it was. And then the second question is, with the graphic arts, you said, is that like computerized graphic arts, and is that something that you're looking into in your department?
Yeah. There's some proposals out. We just have to, actually tomorrow at our department chair, we kind of go again for course proposals. So.
Is there probably an interest in that for the kids that are going to school currently?
Yes.
Okay. Those were my 2 questions.
Okay.
Thanks for coming, and if there's any other questions?
I still have 85 minutes
I
of
know.
just glorious anecdotes.
We got a lot more questions. Thank you for presenting. Moving on to the financial report, Dr. Joe Sanders.
I'll pick up the remaining 85 minutes that Mr. Tallman left on the table. Okay. I'll hit a couple of agenda items here first before I get into this presentation. Let me get back to the agenda. Here we've got our insurance and investment report. And so I do want to point out, when we sold the bonds, we were at $3.5 million, so we've made $34,000 on the investment through PMA in that short period of time, so every little bit helps. The insurance report down here below, what we have is last year's expenses all the way through September, and this year's expenses all the way through September. And so this number here is a good number. I will point out on the graph over here, September was a rough month with some of our expenses, but we're still doing quite well with the health trust fund. And so I'm confident that we'll continue even with these expenses. The stop loss will end up kicking in, so we'll be getting reimbursed for some of those. So that is the investment and the insurance report. And then if you give me a moment to get this loaded up. Each year, we do a financial summary and review. And I got to give credit to Mr. Custis, who put this spreadsheet together, and then we've taken it and dropped it into a PowerPoint. This is the data behind the next several slides, and this is the schedule of cash revenue received and cash expenditures. And this shows a comparison between 16, 17, and 18. And so it's tough to read like that, but it's out there if you want to download it and go through the numbers individually. Or you can just take a look at some of the next couple slides, the graphics here. So these are our operating revenues, and you can see that most of our operating revenues come from our real estate taxes, and then there's other local revenue. That's all the cash that we receive for various events throughout the school year. General state aid accounted for about 17%, and that is an increase, and you'll see that in another slide here over the previous years. And then other state sources and federal sources account for about 5% of our total revenue. And as I mentioned earlier, I really like this graphic here. As you can see, general state aid going back 5 years actually dropped, even with our enrollment going up. And that's kind of odd because general state aid was based off of your enrollment. And so the changes that the evidence-based funding model that the state has put into play, you can start to see the impact of that. Last year we were fully funded, and so it is really nice to see that underneath the general state aid bar graph there as far as doing their share of the revenue. Once again, we rely in this part of the country, or this part of the state, we rely on our local share, and that comes from our local real estate taxes. And you can see the impact of what the federal income does is very minimal on our revenues. This is the data behind the next several slides. This is going to be looking at our expenses on the expense side. And so here is a great graphic that shows that 76% of our total operating expenses are tied up with our salaries and our benefits. Our people are our most important asset here. Just to give you an idea, supplies and materials only account for 7%. And so that is a rather small number when you look at our total budget and what we spend on purchase services. That is anything through a contractor, any of our 300 level items that we spend on. And so I don't remember exactly what that was last year, but with some of the other improvements that we've done, the contracted services that we've brought in, that's where that would be paid for. Okay, so this graphic is like the one before. This is a summary of the 5 years. And as you can see, the purchase services ramped up a little bit this last year. I do have to note to the board that we did receive a $60,000 Ameren incentive check for the controls project. So that kind of helps offset some of that there, but it was a really good project because it's going to pay for itself in about 4 years. Of course, on the supplies and materials, as we're addressing some of our facility needs, you may start to see that increase as well. Okay. This next slide I really like because it shows that the district had made a corrective action in some of their strategies, and the red is the revenues, and the black is the revenues, and the red is the expenses. And so that graph there in 2015 where we crisscrossed, going from 15 to 16, that's where we want to keep it. And if we could even keep that gap there. Keep in mind, we are saving money. It's just not that we're stockpiling revenue. We are saving those money, earmarking that money for future projects. So that will get spent, okay? This is a great graphic of our average daily attendance, and you can see what the trend line is there. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had some significant growth in our average daily attendance, and we know that that number is going to continue to rise. This is probably my favorite graphic in the entire presentation. This is our operating expense per pupil. And so sometimes in the paper, the entire Central Illinois area will be listed, all the public schools, as our operating expense per pupil and instructional expense per pupil. That includes all of the school districts, whether a unit district, elementary district, or high school district. This graphic is just high school only. And what it shows is that our operating expense per pupil is far below the state operating expense per pupil for high school only districts. And I really love the fact that in 2014, we kind of hit a crest and we started to drop down. Now, some of our operating expenses has gone up with some of the projects that we're doing that we're paying for out of the O&M fund. But still, this is a great graphic to show that the district has made good decisions in the past, and these are good trend lines. This is our assessed value. And once again, this is another great graphic because when you take a look at 2013 to 2014, it tells a story. What happened? Well, that was the 2013 tornado that changed our assessed value, actually reduced it, and then you can see the outcome, the effect of that. We had a rapid recovery and it's kind of leveled back off, kind of staying with the same trajectory as it was prior to the tornado. And then this is our tax rate graphic. And then this was a new slide that was put in a couple of years ago. This is our trough analysis. And so what this graphic indicates is the amount of funds that we have in fund balances, and then the different operating lines. This is 180 days cash on hand, and this is 90 days cash on hand. You'll see the spike in 2017. That's because we sold $3.5 million in bonds, and then over the next 2 years, you're going to see that fund balance start to drop. Okay? And that is the overview of our financial review. What questions do you have from the board?
I like how it's put together and it's easy to follow and compare from year to year. It's a little bit easier, and thanks for putting that together. I don't know if I have any direct questions to ask tonight, but thanks for putting it together.
Okay. I got to give the credit to Mr. Custis. He was the brainchild behind that. So.
All right. We can move on. No one has any other questions?
You know, one thing, I noticed the transportation had not gone up, so why was that?
I'll address that when we
Later
get to the levy resolution.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep. And then there is one more report that I will hit on upon in the informational items. It's our update on our bonds. But I put it in two places just for this discussion informational items. So we can, each year we have to present to the board a bond update.
So what is our total bond?
Well,
We have 7 or something I was looking at.
we have 6 bonds that are currently out.
And
So,
what's the total of those?
these are the 6 bonds that are out there, and I like to note the debt service extension base. It's this is what we can when we did the bond refinancing. This is what allowed us to get up to 3.5
But I mean,
million.
so if you were to add up the amount of every one of those bonds, is that in there somewhere?
It is. It's on the second
What is
page.
that? Do you know what
This is our Schedule R, and so, yeah, if I could turn it sideways. But the Schedule R indicates how much we have out in existing bonds, and then when the payback schedule is.
that is? So what is that Schedule R say? Upside down.
Yeah,
Okay, can you get me that
Sure.
number? Because I don't know that. Maybe it's on there, but.
This has, if we add up all the bottom numbers in all the columns, it'll be indicated in there. Okay.
Any other questions for Dr. Sanders? And then you also included the insurance investment report, the
Yes.
treasurer's report for July, and then the treasurer's report for August. Any other questions? Okay. Moving on to board committee reports. So we had some board committees meet over the last month. We had 2 facilities, finance and insurance. And just to give you a quick update of facilities. We went out to the site over by the bleachers and walked through some of the questions that we had answered by PJ Harris and Farnsworth. And then there was no actions on that meeting. And then the second one, we had some decisions to make on possibly changing up some of the bleacher project, and Farnsworth's going to look at that a little bit.
We're rescheduling some of the project.
Yeah, we kind of got an updated timeline, I think.
Yeah, updated timeline, and we moved from pouring the slab first to trying to get the walls up and everything on there, and pouring the slab inside the walls. So just a kind of a change in the schedule.
And then we did see the completed track study that we authorized, and we reviewed that slightly. Trying to think if there's anything, I guess I could have read the minutes again and been updated, but basically we are updated timeline and
Get the progress reports, I think, how the projects are going.
we were able to meet with Farnsworth and PJ here in the second meeting. Finance, does anybody want to tell us what happened with finance?
We looked over the levy, which we'll be voting on tonight, proposed levy, and we're coming in under 5, and we're aiming to capture everything, so we're a little high and make sure we do capture everything. The financial, all the excellent graphs that Dr. Sander just walked us through, we reviewed all those. And then we looked at fund transfers, like we saw earlier. And we looked at how we are investing our available fund balances just a little bit, with the recommendation to that the administration brought forward the idea that we might look out cashing out some of those CDs and finding better ways to invest those. And then we talked about the vehicle purchases, one of which we purchased tonight, I believe, a new truck from Uptrim. And I think that was about it. Is that right, Bonnie?
Yeah, yes. When I remember on the phone, yes, it was.
Right. Okay.
But she was a call-in on that.
I was,
And then
yes.
Chris Armstrong was there, and I was there myself. It was a good meeting. And then I think we had a facilities meeting after that, so piggyback on that. Any other questions about the finance committee meeting? Insurance?
Insurance committee did meet, talked about the insurance report that Dr. Sander just referenced. We had a high month in terms of claims in the month of September, but I think over the last 9 months, 6 of those months we've been under the break-even point, so it's actually been a very good year for the plan. And we'll probably have some reimbursement coming our way on some of the claims from this last month, so things are looking good.
Okay, there's not other on here, but this would be the place we have other. There's
These are the cause of discussion. There's an
under here. Okay, I'll put the other there. So we'll go to the other there. We can move on to discussion and informational items. 7.1 was the resignation of Julie Puckett for the head bookkeeper. 7.2 was resignation of Brandon Rice for the assistant varsity wrestling coach. And then 7.3 is the update on the WCHS bonds that Dr. Sander.
And I do have a number for you on the, and I was able to pull it off of our AFR. It is $18,900,000 is basically our balance on our bonds.
And then moving on to 7.4 is the FOIA, the letter that was received. And then 7.5 is the 1% sales tax.
Yep, and I can just touch base on this quickly. It was an item of interest for the board. The sales tax, we had a really good voter turnout at this particular midterm election. As a matter of fact, I believe it was the highest midterm election since like the 1940s for the country as a whole. The sales tax itself was a very, very close vote. 1,500 votes separated an approved new sales tax versus not. It did not pass on this run. There were around 60,000 voters, and it missed by 1,500. So I know that talking to the other superintendents in Tazewell County, there's a strong interest in running this again. I think you'll probably see an action item next month in January, which would be that same resolution we passed earlier, which would do nothing more than just put the question on the ballot. And so I believe that the plan is to get that in front of all the school boards and have it in place and ready to go for the April election cycle. I think that we put a lot of information out there. We will continue to inform the public. I think the general feel was there was still more informing that needed to happen in specific areas. I think what will end up going on is looking at the actual election results to see where they need to focus those informational efforts. So we'll continue.
Is the county released what precincts, how they voted yet at this point?
Not yet, because they haven't finalized the voting. As soon as they do, we'll have all that.
I was going to say, it's usually like 10 days to...
Till we see that before we get to, we
I
probably
don't
need to look
think
at some of that data before.
You don't have that kind of time. January, you have to get it into the
Well, when would we
board
get
before
that
January
back?
2nd or something.
How long would it
I think they have to have it filed like 10 days after the election.
No, it's a little more than that. So it'll take a little bit of time, but I'll get that out to you as soon as we can. Honestly, I think preliminary results showed that it was pretty favorably looked upon in Washington. So I don't know where else to go with that, though, Jennifer. I can't. We're stuck on some timelines in order to get it in that next ballot cycle, and I know that what's going to happen is it's going to get pushed all the boards. So every board's just going to have to make a decision based on the information they have as to whether or not they want to put it back on the ballot. That's really the only question here, is do you want to put it on or not? So.
And then the county will give us those information, or you'll send it on to us after you, do they send it to you?
I'll probably have to reach out to them.
Email them or something?
Yeah, and I've been watching and waiting for that final.
Probably online too, isn't it?
Once I get it done, it should be, yes. But, well, I'm getting a head shake over there, so we'll probably have to track it down. I have a little help from an audience member, so as we figure it out, we'll let you know as soon as we can.
Do we have to have another discussion about, we talked about abating money? Would we have another discussion about that before we?
Well, we passed that actual policy. So that policy still stands. I mean, that doesn't change anything. If we want to have a discussion about the date of review, we could always have that. But
Yeah, because I think
I think that helped. I think the abatement is a big sales pitch, and so like I said, maybe that needs to be something to look at too. I don't know.
the way the policy that we passed, the board would review it in 2 years, if I remember.
2 years from if it passed.
it was FY20, so
But I mean, that's what I'm saying, could we adjust that
Yes.
number? Okay.
we can always adjust policy. That was pretty easy, just requires a first reading. and a
Because I think
second
Morton
reading,
was
so.
pretty receptive to what they did, and so that might be something we want to review.
And that'll be a discussion amongst the superintendents to talk to other boards as well about taking similar steps, because I do think in a case like this, it will be good for taxpayers to have a little bit of protection.
Since we function on some level as a township here with the 3 grade schools, would it make sense, and maybe we did more than I realized, but work with the other grade schools to run together on that? Because on some level, we're in a better position to abate some of that back to the taxpayers in other districts, like Central, obviously has a huge construction situation. And so on some level, we could explain that we're, if you live in Washington, even though, it's actually not a tax on anybody. It doesn't raise anything. It would lower people's taxes is the amazing thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was going to
That's
lower
the fear.
everybody's
Well,
taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We encompass everything, so
Yeah, right.
kind of what we're doing is
And
going
we did a number of presentations, superintendents at Rotary Lions Club. I mean, we were at a number of different, we went to the city board, our village board, went to Chamber of Commerce. We went as a group. So there were 2 to 4 superintendents represented in every meeting. So it was the group as a whole talking about what's going on and the impact that it would have on all the districts and what boards are talking about within each district. So,
Yeah, I think the education component is huge, because this is the 3rd one we've been running 10 years, I think. And it easily got the most votes. So,
At the places that you presented, were people receptive to hearing what you had to say?
very much so.
Okay.
Yes.
So they took an interest in what it was about and educate themselves a little bit on that.
Well, I think one of the things that we were able to point out is that might be available to relief. And truthfully, on the one-cent sales tax, to get the amount that was relieved, you would have to purchase a pretty excessive amount of goods. I mean, to get $100, you would almost have to spend $10,000 on just goods. So in a lot of cases, what they would find is they would actually save money on their property taxes over what they're spending on the one-cent sales.
That'll be a topic, I'm sure.
Oh, it'll be a topic, yes, it will.
All right, any other questions regarding the 1% sales tax information? 7.6, the textbook list.
You gave the textbook list.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
I believe it was industrial arts. I see some of those books that they're ordering are like in the 1980s. Now, I know there are classic books that are very, very old, but that just seemed to be a little bit quite away, or far away from newer.
No one's written any more.
No, new agriculture. I just wondered.
These are the current books, they're just still in our
They're
inventory.
still-
that
okay.
They're still utilizing.
Okay.
So, I think Mr. Tenhaken, requisitioned some additional resources, but, the reality is with technology and Chromebooks being so readily available, our reliance on textbooks in certain content areas is diminishing. Yep.
Okay.
And that's what I was going to ask, are a lot of these classes using Chromebooks and internet-based versus buying new textbooks? Because I think that was a big savings that we've had over the district for a number of years.
Some of our AP and dual credit courses are still going to have to purchase textbooks, and that'll be a little more frequent. Those will be more updated because they are required for those programs. For example, dual credit through ICC, they're going to tell you exactly which textbook and which edition you need to purchase. And I think they're rotating that much more quickly than a traditional high school would because they shift the cost over to the students.
It's interesting. I mean, I hadn't realized that. But I mean, like graphic communication, they're using books from 81 and 86. And I mean, graphic communication has changed dramatically since then. I mean, I would just point out that this seems like something maybe we should, there might be a beginning point in the curriculum discussion on that.
Well, I think that there are a number of things going on there, so yeah, we can have that discussion.
That class hasn't made in several years,
Yeah.
and we don't use those textbooks. This is just a list of which
Just a
textbooks
list.
are attached to the class. But that class hasn't made in several years. So,
Okay.
Moving on to other, since there is no other, I'm going to add other. There's been a lot of things happening in the community, and I'm sure we can brag up a lot of different things, but one thing that I wanted to draw attention to, that the community members that were impacted got together and did some pretty fabulous things in the community. They welcomed in Sacred Heart Griffin at the square, and then they also gave out a ticket coupon for Cocoa. I think they had something on there that said, "You warmed our hearts 5 years ago, let us warm you today. Thank you from Washington Community." And they reached out to Mr. Noblock and got his approval and did some different things, and that's just one thing that happened. And I know there was things in the football end of it and the cheerleading end of it. While they did all that, they were still able to cheer on our team and support them with showing a little bit of class that I felt that was successful and showed a little bit of our character in the community. So I was pretty proud of them. They reached out to me and I said, "I don't have anything to do with it. You're going to need to talk to the proper people," and they did. So they did a fabulous job. And I haven't heard the numbers on the Cocoa coupons, but I know they were used quite a bit. So that was my big bragging up that I wanted to say. So that was really nice.
I noticed a lot of people around the square and, cheering them on when they came into town and stuff, which was
And I did have someone write me an email from Sacred Heart Griffin saying that that meant a lot to them because they remembered us from that whole thing. And it's now we're coming into the 5-year anniversary of our tornado. It did affect everyone differently with different stress levels. So nice way to give back. So that's all I have. Anybody else have anything that they want to share under other? Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Let's pull that up so I read it right. Okay, under the consent agenda, we have a resolution that it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the minutes of following: 8.11, the Facility Committee meeting minutes of October 3rd, 2018. 8.12, the Facility Committee meeting minutes of October 10th, 2018.
Yes. Yes, we
Okay.
do.
All right, regular board meeting, 8.13, regular board meeting of October 9th, 2018. 8.14, the Finance Committee meeting of October 29th, 2018. 8.15, the Facility Committee meetings of October 29th, 2018. And then 8.2 is the bills. Approve the payment of the bills as presented. The payroll per contract and that of the treasurer be permitted to use the orders of payment for the same. Resolution 8.3, it be resolved that the Board of Education approves the 2018-2019 mid-year, 3-year, and 5-year graduates as presented. And is there a motion to approve the consent agenda of 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3 as recommended?
So moved.
second.
Motion is second. Any discussion?
I was just curious, how many mid-year graduates do we have?
It was in the packet. There was various ones
It's a little
of,
over 30.
I was going to say 3-year and 5-year.
That's a combination of all of them, yeah.
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Essing?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to action items. We're going to personnel, 9.1. Certified personnel employment. Okay. 9.11A, approve Alan Klinsman. Okay. A long-term sub for math, and 9.12B, approve the employment of Samantha Schultz for long-term sub for science. Is there a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Knopfinger? Yes. Butler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Essing?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to 9.12, non-certified employees. Okay, the first one is there a motion to approve the employment of Susan Weldon, the secretary for the Township Special Ed?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion? This would be for the 2018-2019 school year at the rate per the recommended for employment. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Fisher,
Here. Yes.
Knopfinger,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Essing.
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, we're moving on to 9.12B, approve the employment of Liz Hamady for the Dean's Secretary. Bear with me here, my computer is on. Is there a motion to present the recommendation for employment to the Dean's Secretary as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion?
This is a replacement. Well, remember when my assistant left, that opened a spot in my office, so the former dean's secretary, Mrs. Osborne, had applied. We ended up approving her to move, so she transferred into superintendent's office, so this is replacement of that position.
Thank you for that clarification.
You're
I
welcome.
kind of knew that, but I didn't know all the detail. Roll call, please.
Ward,
Yes.
Essing.
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Knopfinger,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Motion carries. 9.12C is a recommendation of Crystal Ledger as the payroll accounting coordinator for the 2018-2019 school year at the rate as per recommended for employment. Is there a motion to approve as recommended?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion? You interviewed and it went well and...
Interviewed, went well.
She's got an excellent last name.
All right, roll call, please.
Butler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Essing.
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
We actually had a pretty good slate of candidates too. We're pleased. So,
Good. And I'll have somebody who likes figures and numbers.
School finance.
Okay. Moving on to 9.13 extracurricular. Is there a motion, 9.13A, approve the employment of Zach Davis for the head boys lacrosse coach?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Zach has been a head coach prior, or a coach for lacrosse?
He's been a football coach.
Okay.
But he coached the lacrosse when they were there.
Yes,
To the Park
yes.
District or,
Yeah,
yeah.
yes, so,
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Fisher,
Yes.
Knopfinger,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Essing.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Moving on to 9.13B, approve the employment of Graham Miles, assistant lacrosse coach. Let's see what it reads. Approve Graham Miles as assistant boys lacrosse coach for the 2018-2019 school year at the rate presented as recommended for employment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Is he a teacher here?
he's not,
Okay.
he's not. But I think he's been around the lacrosse program.
That's what I was. Roll call, please.
Essing,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Knopfinger,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes. Motion carries. 9.13B, and this one is, oh, and then this one, C? Okay. C. Okay, marked it off. Okay, 9.13C, and approve the employment of Sarah Labreche. I'm sorry if I'm butchering her name.
Thank you, it's labor.
Yeah, Labreche.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. For the girls, head girls lacrosse coach. Is there a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Okay, roll call, please.
Ward,
Yes.
Essig? Yes. Fisher?
Yes.
Knopfinger? Yes. Butler?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for telling us how to pronounce your name.
Sure.
9.13D, approve the employment of Matt Webster for the assistant varsity wrestling coach for the 2018-2019 school year at the rate presented as recommended for employment. Is there a motion to approve as presented?
Move.
Second.
Motion is second. Is he replacing someone?
Yes.
Right. The woman, okay.
Mhm.
Roll call, please.
Knopfinger? Yes. Butler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Essig? Yes. Fisher?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 9.2, the approve the fund transfer. So this is the recommendation to approve the transfer of funds from the operation and maintenance funds to the capital projects. The recommendation is the board would transfer $500,000 from the operation and maintenance fund to the capital projects fund to be utilized for the roof work for the 1956-1962 edition. Is there a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? That's so we can pay for all those roofs that got fixed. Roll call, please.
Butler?
Yes.
Knopfinger? Yes. Fisher?
Yes.
Essig?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes. Motion carries. This one is, we're going to be talking about the working cash abatement resolution.
Right, and this is, I had mentioned this before, that there's two, in a sense, transfers. We don't need to have a hearing to transfer the working cash. And so what this resolution is about, and I want to note that the entire resolution is listed here. And so we don't need to read the entire resolution, we can just read the top portion. So I put together this. Basically, this is going to the board to approve a transfer or abatement of $2.5 million of the working cash fund to the capital projects fund.
Thank you for putting that together so I don't have to read the 6 pages of the resolution. So the recommendation is to adopt a resolution abating the working cash funds in the amount of $2,500,000 from the working cash fund to the capital projects fund. Is there a motion as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. And Dr. Sander explained that. This is something we've been talking about. Any other questions?
Just remind everybody that this was money that the board had set aside years ago, right? So it's just another example of setting aside money ahead of time so that we can pay for these things without impacting sort of annual expenditures and so on. It's good planning by the board before us as well.
Okay, roll call, please.
Essig?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Knopfinger? Yes. Butler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes. Motion carries. 9.4 is to approve the 2018 resolution estimating tax extension. And that's what we were talking about a
Yep.
little bit earlier.
And I'll jump in on this. I'll go through this presentation here, take a couple minutes, but Illinois law requires that at least 20 days prior to the adoption of its aggregate levy that the local board of education shall estimate the dollar amount of the budget requirements and aggregate levy for that year. And so we have done that. The CPI is 2.1% this year. And so being in a tax cap county, we're limited to an extension that is 5% or the CPI, whichever is less. And so the 2.1 is the founding number of which we can increase our levy by. And so on Monday, October 29th, the Finance Committee met and we discussed the 2018 levy. We've brought forward a recommended levy that is 4.467% over last year's levy, so it's underneath the 5%. And you may ask, so if the CPI is 2.1%, how can you get to 4 point something percent? Well, Any new construction, any new property that comes on the books, that's not capped by the CPI. Okay, so you can do a full extension on that. Part of this process is I go through these numbers here. This is the 2018-19 budget expenditures by all the funds. And so I also list the budget estimates for 19 and 20. And so how do I come up with these numbers? I look at some of the past spending to see where we're at. And then I also consider like capital improvements. We're looking to spend $3 million this year in capital improvements, and next year we'll probably spend $2 million, and then the year after that, as we wrap up that fiscal year, anything that's left over, as you know, in construction, it always seems like the bills just continue to drag on. And so for a total of about $6 million. This is just an estimate. As we get into the project, I may adjust this to $2.5 million. If the project's going well and we feel comfortable, that'll all be paid out in the next fiscal year. So that's how I come up with these numbers. And so if we take a look, this year we had a total budgeted expenditure of $25 million. You got to keep in mind that there's a lot of projects that are being spent on in this amount. And then next year it should drop down a little bit. On the revenue side, I only look at the education fund because that is our largest fund. And so what I try to do is, I have done this in the 7 years that I've done it, I keep the state revenue always the same. And some years it's been good, and we've received more revenue from the state, and other years it's been bad. But I've always just found it best to keep it, exactly the same. And I do that exactly with the federal revenue that we receive. I keep that number the same. So how do I come up with our local revenue? I just look at building permits. I track that month by month. I get a gauge on how much new property will be coming on. And so Gary Twist at the county assessor's office gives us information. And so I track kind of where our EAV has been. And so we look at maybe a 3% increase in our total local revenue. And that's how I come up with those numbers. And that goes into helping set our levy. And so then this is the levy spreadsheet that we use to drive this amount down here, which is 4.467%. That is the total aggregate levy. And that is the total increase over the previous year. Now let me make note. We're not approving the levy tonight. This is just the estimate. So we could change these numbers if we get the notion to do so. We can do that, but we are underneath the 5%, which means that we don't have to have a truth in taxation hearing or the proverbial black box notice that goes in the paper. And so Bonnie, you asked a question about transportation. What we do in this yellow column here is in a tax cap county, and I'll put this in my levy presentation for December. You don't want to leave dollars on the table, okay? You don't want to not levy for dollars and miss the opportunity for those funds, because then you miss that the rest of the time. You lose those dollars forever. And so a lot of districts will balloon a levy. And so the PTEL maximum, like in the Ed Fund, in this spreadsheet says it's $9.4 million. So we presented to the Finance Committee a $9.5 million. That gives us a little bit of buffer in our Ed Fund. Bonnie asked a question, and she contacted me. She said she noticed in the transportation that we are basically leaving some dollars on the table. And I said, well, that was kind of by design. Our transportation fund it carries a healthy fund balance. We were right at just about $900,000 of transportation fund balance. We've purchased a couple of vehicles this year, so I'm not looking at doing any purchases. All of our leases are locked in. So our transportation expenses for next year, the next fiscal year, should be locked in pretty tight. And so it's not that we're leaving dollars on the table, because our total aggregate levy is greater than what our PTEL maximum is. So we've covered that. We're just not levying as much in the transportation fund. and that's perfectly permissible. So I hope I explained that all right. And so we have a total aggregate levy of 4.4%, and the recommendation of the Finance Committee on October 29th, this was brought forward to them, and so we needed to bring a recommendation to the board, an estimate of the 2018 tax extension. Additionally, the Board of Education acknowledges that it has reviewed this estimate and the estimate for the 2019-20 revenues and expenditures. And the most important part here is that by adopting this resolution, the board verifies that the total request is under the 5%, thus not requiring a truth in taxation. So bring to the suggested motion.
Thanks for putting all that together. It does take you a little bit of time, I'm sure, to get those numbers and what your projection is for the levy for the estimate. So it is coming from committee, so we won't need a motion in a second. Is there any further discussion? I'm just going to go ahead and read what we're acknowledging, that it is reviewed the estimate 2019-2020 revenue and expenditure amounts as projected by the Assistant Superintendent, and adopt the resolution verifying that the estimate revenues and expenditures have been reviewed and that a truth in taxation hearing is not necessary. Is there a roll call, please?
Ward,
Yes.
Essig,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Knopfinger,
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Motion carries. Nice work, Finance Committee. Okay, moving on to 9.5, approve the service agreement with Allen Transportation. And this is something that Joe has talked about before, and Dr. Freeman.
We have had a great relationship with Allen Transportation Services. They provide all of our special services transportation. And the way that they extend their contracts is we're currently under contract for 1920, so this contract is going to be an extension to 2021. And Roger called all the superintendents as they provide this service. He brought forward a proposal that is a 2% increase, which is great, considering that we've had everywhere from 2.5, and I do have to note, after the 2013 tornado, he kept it flat. He did that for all of the township schools. And so last year it was a 3%. He did implement a $25 per route per day surcharge. And that's good. It's not a total percentage increase. So if you're utilizing the services to send students to, say, Schramm or Kiefer, that's where that $25 per day. It's really fair, because then each district would be assessed that for those services that they're utilizing. And so he was able to keep our total percentage increase down to 2%. And so that's the background information on that contract. And like I said, Roger Allen has been wonderful to work with, and I think he does a commendable job providing those services for us.
Is there a motion to approve the service agreement with Allen Transportation Services for the 2020 and 2021 school year as presented?
Move.
Second.
Motion and second. Thanks for clarification on that, Dr. Sanders. Roll call, please.
Knopfinger,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Essig,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to 9.6, approve the maintenance truck purchase.
Once again, I've given the board a lot of information on this, and with the snow tonight, it's timely. This is really a great deal, and Uftrans has been a great partner with WCHS, everything from our driver's ed cars to one of our current maintenance trucks. But this will allow us to really update our fleet. Really, the board is in good position, or the district is in good position with our vehicles. at 5 years to come, I'd say. All of our vehicles, our youngest one would be, our oldest one would be a 2016. This is to replace a 2004 Chevy Silverado 2500 series truck. And so they are going to graciously take it off of our hands and give us a good trade-in back. So.
And this one's going to have a snowplow.
It will. It will.
Is there a motion to approve the purchase of a Ford F-250 truck in the amount of $24,928 from the Upgreen Auto Mall?
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Ward,
Yes.
Essing,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Motion carries. 9.7, and this one was spoke about a little bit in Facilities Committee. And this is they recommend to begin the demolition of the west side bleachers over the Christmas break.
Did you want to talk about that at all?
Well, basically, we had a conversation with our bleacher company, talking about how much time it would take to install the bleachers. And they determined about 8 weeks by the time they install footings and then erect the bleachers themselves, which would almost completely fill up your summer. That doesn't include demolition. So in order to keep the project on schedule, we talked to Southern about the potential of demolishing earlier than originally scheduled. Originally, that schedule was designed for the end of May, beginning of June, to start the demolition. We brought it to the attention of the Facilities Committee, and I believe this is coming on recommendation from the committee as well. And so the recommendation is that we go ahead and authorize them to demolish over Christmas break. And they think they can pull it off in 5 days, and there are more than 5 days available. Obviously, it's weather permitting. We don't know what the weather will bring us. Case in point, tonight. So we'll see how things go, and if they can, they'll get in there and get it all torn out. We'll be okay. There were some questions about how that would impact like soccer, girls soccer, lacrosse, track. All that does is it moves everybody over to our current home stand of bleachers. We have more than enough seating capacity available there. They're just going to be looking west instead of east. And then next year, everybody can look east instead of west.
What, I guess the one question we did have is if it cannot get done in that amount of time while the kids are on break, what is our plan?
That was discussed today, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Ryan about what the fallback position might be, but we will. Right now, it's just authorizing them for the potential of doing that. We'll have to talk to them
To have a
about.
plan so that we don't disrupt.
Correct, because our big problem over there is parking. I will say, depending on what they need for demolition purposes, like how much space they need in the parking lot, we might be able to still accommodate. With 30 kids graduating, that opens up 30 spots in the senior lot, which then in turn could open up 30 spots from the default lot.
But, so ideally, we wouldn't do that if we didn't, just be for a few days.
Right. Yeah, our plan would not be to do that for long, because we're sure that parking would be a risk.
And so if they can't, does this allow, I just want to make sure the recommendation works. Like, so if they can't do it over winter break, Christmas break, for example, can this be done later then, like
Yes.
spring? So we're not limited to Christmas, it's just we're doing.
I mean, this
by
does say Christmas break, but yours, I guess we could have another
We would have another.
motion.
You just
if
redo
didn't
it.
get done.
Instead of
We
just-
would have a
We're just-
backup plan, right?
We're just authorizing the ability for them to do that. Honestly, that's not something I wanted to sign off on from my desk. I thought it would be better. You know, those were erected in the 40 years ago, so 1970s. I don't want to sign off on them just walking out there and demolishing without board approval. That's basically what I'm asking for here.
So you don't want to modify it to just make it, we permit you to demolish them?
Well, if they can't do it over Christmas break, we just put another motion.
Yeah, we'll have to have a whole nother conversation piece around that, so.
Okay. Because I'm a fan of getting it done as soon as possible. Because I just said we don't need those bleachers anymore, and there's no need to hold up construction, so that's why I'm.
The motion's coming from committee to approve the demolition on the west side of bleachers over Christmas break. Roll call, please.
Fisher,
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Essing.
Motion carries. we came from. Now moving on to 9.8 is the authorize the superintendent to work with PJ Hare to let out bids for flooring package for the music edition.
You may recall that the flooring package was pulled back from the original set of bid packages because we didn't have any good bids on it. So, yeah, we didn't have any bids on it. So the thought was, let's push the flooring package out a little bit later. That's all we're doing. You're just authorizing me to work with PJ Hare to put all the bid advertisement out and collect the bids. This does not approve the bids. That would actually be done in a later meeting.
Is there a motion to authorize the superintendent to work with PJ Hare to let the bids out for the flooring package as for the music edition as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Butler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Essig,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
Motion carries. Hopefully we'll have some good bids on that this time. And they changed the flooring a little bit too since
They did the pattern.
the
yes.
pattern, yeah, so that's probably a good thing.
And some wall colors.
They did change the wall colors too. Okay, moving on to authorization to dispose of district property 9.9. This is some personal property other than the buildings and land that is no longer needed for school purposes. It is approved the personnel property is listed below, a 1997 Kubota tractor. Wow.
There
So
she is. Isn't she a beaut?
I know, so is there a motion to approve the disposition, the personal property as listed as no longer needed for school purposes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Essig,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Moving on to 9.10. That is for the, approve the revised job description for the head cook. And if you took a look at that, that hasn't been changed for quite some time. Is there a motion to approve the revised job description for the head cook as presented? Someone.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Knopfinger,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Essig,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to 9.11, and that would be a motion to approve the revised job description for the payroll accounting coordinator. Is there a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ward,
Yes.
Essig,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to number 10 is adjournment. There's no executive session tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn for this evening? Oh,
I should have got this in the other.
oh, okay. This
But
is other.
It's other.
Okay.
But it being the case that Veterans Day falls on a board meeting, I thought it would be important to recognize that we have an actual veteran in our presence, Dr. Sanders. So thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
It's Colonel Sanders.
Okay.
Oh, shoot. I threw that in there.
Yeah,
How long have you been waiting to say that?
Oh, for a long time. For a
So-
long time. And I didn't even bring in a bucket, but I was thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Sandra, I will let you know that the KFC officially opened tonight, so you can.
I think I'm going to have to drive through.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Roll call, please.
Fisher,
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Ward, yes.
Essig.
Okay, motion carries.
If you